and I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be pulling a thread that we got to in another video. And in this other video, we were talking about the community of early online skeptics / atheists, which was like the core of sort of YouTube culture in the earliest days of YouTube, and how the individuals in this community that went right, they first became anti-feminist, then anti-woke, then went into Gamergate, and then became the seedbed that the new right movement grew out of. And then another group of them drifted in another direction. They drifted left. And the group that drifted left, like they were in the early atheist, anti-theist movement, and then the movement went either at the anti-feminist or anti-woke stage. They lost their audiences. And notably, we didn't talk about it in that video, but there is actually one that drifted left even after that stage. He was there for anti-feminist, he was there for anti-woke, and he only drifted left at the trans stuff. This is a dev / shortfatguy Taku who has completely fallen off. His views are way lower than ours now, if you look at like weekly counts.
Overall drifted left?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has refused to really call out the trans community as a serious problem. Something that needs to be in some way, you know, like legislatively, something like that addressed.
Inspector, do you know if the killer was a man or a woman?
Well, of course I know that. What else is there? A kitten?
And I think that that's part of, he's also become more pro-censorship, like censoring people on his forums and stuff like that.
Really? Wow. That surprises me. It seems so unlike who I thought he was when I first started watching his videos.
Well, I mean, I think that's why he lost a lot of his followership, right? Like,
what makes a man turn neutral? Lust for gold? Power? Or were you just born with a heart full of neutrality?
Like, it does seem very anti what I thought he was, right? But we noted one notable unique case in all of this, which was Shoe0nHead. And Shoe0nHead was very unique for a number of reasons. The biggest being is that she didn't drift left over time or begin to adopt leftist talking points. She was thoroughly leftist from the beginning, and quite a bit more leftist than I think a casual viewer may believe. She, for example, to go over some of her leftist positions, universal health care she wants. She has strong support of labor unions. She's a believer in free college. She is, as well as tuition forgiveness. She's broadly anti-capitalist and anti-corporate, regularly criticizing big businesses, everything like that. And she promotes working class populism. She voted for Joe Biden in 2020. She was a very strong supporter of Bernie Sanders. And so, yeah, very, very left-wing, especially in her economic views. And also in her social views to an extent.
She hasn't talked about it a lot in most of her recent videos. She'll come out critical of Trump, but in no way more than, in fact, less than many of the conservative people that I'll hear on YouTube these days, which is weird.
That I would say is true for more recent videos, but if you look at the whole holisticness of her work, she did not lose followers when she was talking about these leftist things. And she even has the name among her fan base of Commie Mommy. So, you know, it's a sweet name, I think. But it's also socially, she's been shown to be quite progressive. She right now is married to a trad cath and has a kid, so be aware of that. And she converted to Catholicism over COVID. But before that, she was in a long-term relationship with Armoured Skeptic, where she was public about having a 24/7 BDSM daddy dom little girl relationship.
Not really?
Yeah.
Whoa. Wow. Okay.
And she still hasn't condemned kink or anything like that, which is funny because on the social leftist front, that would put her with us, where we do not condemn kink at all. We're like, what people are aroused by random.
I don't know. Daddy Down Little Girl's very Catholic, you know. But they work father into everything. I mean, come on.
I guess that's right. Yeah.
It's extremely paternalistic as a religion and like organization. I don't understand why that particular affiliation wouldn't be quite matched.
But I mean, she has kind of made joking videos about kink. She made that one, a really good one actually, about women getting into like monster effer books.
Oh yeah.
But
Yeah.
she didn't outright condemn it. It was more the way that we talk about stuff like that, where it's
Mhm.
like women are ridiculous that they pretend that men are the deviant ones and that they're little saintesses. But in that other video, what I talked about was, why is she still relevant, but none of the other leftist YouTubers are not relevant? Is because she didn't try to change her audience, and she didn't need to convert her audience. Her audience was never really persuaded by her economic arguments. She was never a pipeline out of the right to anyone. She is still a mainstream watched figure in the right. And when I say in the right, I mean, if she did a video and Asmongold didn't do a cover of it, I would be very surprised. Leaflet covers a lot of her videos. Nuxanor always needs to brag when he gets mentioned in one of her videos, so clearly he's watching them. You know, if she mentioned us or birth rates, obviously I would be there.
Do you think it's possible that
Malcolm.
could be watching you right now?
Well, if I was a
Malcolm.
I would certainly be watching and possibly taping for later playback because, you know, it's a big deal to be talked about on
A Shoe0nHead video. And it's and I watch a lot of her videos too, just for even sort of like cultural relevance in the right. We pointed out that Skybrows regularly has her along all of his alt-right VTubers and everything like that in his videos. And so first, I want to talk on two topics here. One is how and why, because this came up a lot in the comments of that video. How has Shoe0nHead maintained this right-wing following and loyalty? For an example of another right-wing influencer, Homath did a chart of women he trusts, like online influencers he trusted. And she came in really high on that chart, above, I think, the majority of like female conservative influencers on the chart, right? Like that is saying something, right? Note at that, one of the characters he had at the top of the chart, which I think is fun, is Pearl Davis. He's like, Pearl Davis sniffs this girl out. This is with it was on his episode where he was talking about the
one who said that she was a virgin when she got married and the Pope blessed her marriage, and then turns out she was actually sleeping with this other guy while engaged, etc.
Yeah. Well, and in that episode, I realized, just as a brief tangent here, and I think Shoe0nHead actually sort of fits into this, is that of conservative female influencers, because I wasn't watching Nuxanor's version of this, I was watching the Leaflet cover of this, is that in the conservative influencer space, there is a certain type of woman who just like comes up and her front and center thing is, I am X religious woman, right? Like I'm the trad cast sexy woman, right? And these are the people I think of when I think of quote unquote Christian influencers. And Leaflet was commenting that, you know, she gets accused of being a quote unquote Christian VTuber. Like, how dare you say this as a Christian VTuber? And I realized how comical it was to consider a figure like Leaflet or a figure like Shoe0nHead alongside these quote unquote, like, I guess I'll call them Christian sea-thot influencers. That's what we'll call them, the Christian thought influencers.
Oh my gosh, that's such a thing though. Yeah.
Because neither of them, while both of them is Christian at this point, neither of them leads anything with that, right? Like that's not their front, that's not their identity, that's not their hook for their audience. And I think it's useful to know, like when you're watching an influencer, to know, are they likely trustable? Are they likely authentic? The ones that are the sea-thots are very likely inauthentic, right? Broadly speaking, stuff seems to blow up for them at a fairly frequent rate. Whereas I'm just not familiar with that many controversies at all with individuals on the other end of the scale. With the only one maybe I'm aware of is the Pearl Davis sleeping with, you seem to have a preference for black guys, which, like, whatever. I understand why that's a controversy. I do. But I also, it's like, you know, your preferences are your preferences, right? Like, I mean this, like, we in the conservative community should be defending the idea of your preferences are your preferences. My preferences are for white women. That doesn't make me a racist, right? Like, in fact, if you watch our video, which race is the most attractive, we do break down that, but generally races prefer their own ethnicity over other ethnicities. I should note here, I'm not saying this because she's ever stated she had the preference for black guys. It's just of the 3 public boyfriends she's had, 2 of them have been black, and one of them she needed to clarify was not black and was Dominican. So apparently he looked black to other people. And it may not be due to a preference on her part. It may be due to the cursed phenomenon that we're not supposed to talk publicly about, but it probably is useful for young girls, if they happen to be watching this, to be aware of this. The once you go black, you never go black phenomenon is not necessarily because black guys are significantly better when dating or something like that. It is in large part also because a large chunk of the white male population finds girls significantly less attractive after, or at least significantly less valuable as dating or even sexual prospects after they know they've had relations with black men. I'm not saying this is a good thing, but you know, everyone has their preferences. And in the same way that it's like not necessarily a good thing that guys on average happen to find girls less attractive after they know they've slept with a lot of people. But it's also a fact that it's useful for girls to know when they're sort of gauging their dating publicly. And I don't think anyone ever, for example, informed Pearl that her relationship would have this effect. And that's sad, right? And note, I want to be clear here, I didn't say that many white male racists' opinion of a girl goes down significantly after they know she has slept with a black guy. I am saying many white men, even ones who I have known who no one would think to call them a racist. They have no other views that could get them in trouble for being racist. And so they do not air this particular view. And through not airing this view, because obviously in society, if you did that, that would be, and I'm not saying I feel that way, it would be very damaging to you, but it's important that girls are aware of this. In fact, it's so common, I'm drawn to wonder if it might have a genetic component. So drop in the comments if you are not white and if you know a woman of your ethnicity has slept with a white guy, or you can also add black guy here. Does that drop her attractiveness to you more than a regular body count would? But anyway, that's the only controversy I'm aware of, and I don't even think of that as a real controversy. That's not. She's never pretended to be a white nationalist. She's never pretended to be an ethnocentrist. She's never pretended to be like that. Is in no way betraying the image she has portrayed to the public.
Well, it's so funny that she could have someone like Nick Fuentes on and kind of defend him and be friendly with him, and then get castigated for that, but then also be defenestrated for formerly having black boyfriends. Like, okay, so. Like, what are you mad at her because she's not a racial supremacist, or you're mad that she is?
We're seeing this with Trump right now. Yesterday, or like a few days ago, everyone was freaking out. They said, "Can you believe Trump says he wants to bomb all Iranians?" And of course, that's not what he said. He even ended the tweet with, praying for the great people of Iran. But then the next day, he doesn't bomb them, and he gets the beginnings of the truce worked out, and then all of the same people who were freaking out on him yesterday for wanting to bomb all Iranians, they were like, "Oh, Taco, he didn't bomb all the Iranians. He should have bombed all the Iranians. Why aren't you bombing them?" Right? Like, it's more just like attack them whenever. Like when somebody's on the right, you just get attacked for anything, and it makes you a little numb to it after. You're just like, okay, you're just gonna hate me no matter what I say. So I have no need to take on anything performative at this point. But what I wanted to discuss here was, one, the phenomenon of why she's popular on the right, and two, the phenomenon more broadly, which I guess I'm going to start with as a meta phenomenon, is I was looking with AI and I could not find an equivalent to Shoe0nHead on the left, meaning there is no mainstream popular figure on the left who has right-wing views. There is no.
I think there's one, but it's over, which was the Colbert Report. It was this idea. I mean, and he wasn't even actually right wing, right? But he pretended to be right wing, and leftists loved that. But I think they also just kind of loved the right wing views being espoused sometimes. Like they just kind of they were allowed to enjoy laughing and watching it and kind of even liking it because it was a joke. Of course, they didn't like it. It was just a
patriotism and vitalism that they could play along with and have fun with, right? I think that was what grabbed people in that, and it was almost prototypical of a channel like ours, like the Colbert Report.
Yeah.
I mean, people would say, "Oh, you support everything Trump does." And it's like, yeah, we do. Even if one day I believe in, unless something is like a true and genuine betrayal and not something that he said he was going to do on the campaign trail, I should go along with it, right? And like, for example, the Iran bombing thing on the campaign trail, he said, I will bomb Iran to smithereens.
As you know, there have been 2 assassination attempts on my life that we know of, possibly due Iran. But we've been threatened very directly by Iran. And I think you have to let them know that you do any attacks on former presidents or candidates for president, your country gets blown to smithereens, as we say.
Right? Like, so it's the same with like when Elon went against Trump for all of these things that he put into the bill. It's like, yeah, but he said he was going to do all this government bloat on the campaign trail is how he got elected, right? Like it was one of the compromises that our side came to. So I don't, but I guess that does make me look like having a relationship with Trump the same way the Stephen Colbert character had with, who was a Republican of that era? Maybe George Bush or something. Anyway, I know George Bush, by the way. He's a really nice guy. The people are, I think he made some mistakes during his presidency, but I don't think he made them with malice. And I think obviously the biggest mistakes he made was attempting nation building in the Middle East, but he just didn't have a history or knowledge to know that that wouldn't work, right? Like we had done it in Japan, we had done it in Germany. No one had really tried it in the Middle East before. If it had worked like it had in Japan and Germany and South Korea, which was a pretty successful track record up to that point. And in mainstream culture at the time did not admit that people were genetically different. He couldn't have gone to someone and said, how many successful democracies have ever been set up in an Arab majority country, or what do Muslims really believe? Like that information just wasn't out there back then, right? And maybe this attitude explains why there isn't this on the left, right? I think many people on the right are actually fairly able to be forgiving of people's political differences. We are open to have friends and be influenced by people who appear to be approaching arguments with good faith. And I think that she represents that for a lot of people, and the left cannot do that. That's why Stephen Colbert, which I think is a good flip here, is their closest thing to a Shoe0nHead, because everything he presented was explicitly in bad faith, which is why it was okay. And I think that many of us didn't know how bad faith it was until after Stephen Colbert decided to be his real personality. And then we got to see, oh, this guy is like completely cooked in the brain. Specifically, the funniest example of this was when Jon Stewart went on his show and tried to explain that the lab leak hypothesis was likely correct. And funny, like that segment was so funny. And Steven got like increasingly nervous, like, but this is off script, John. This is off script, John. We don't talk about this in our community, John.
The suffering of this pandemic, which was more than likely caused by science.
Hold on one second.
No. Now, listen.
But what do you mean by that? Do you mean like this was perhaps there's a chance that this was created in a lab? I'd love to hear it.
Novel respiratory coronavirus overtaking Wuhan, China. What do we do? Oh, you know who we could ask? The Wuhan Novel Respiratory Coronavirus Lab. The disease is the same name as the lab. And then they asked the scientists, wait a minute, you work at the Wuhan Respiratory Coronavirus Lab. How did this happen? And they're like, a pangolin kissed a turtle. And you're like, no, the name of your lab. If you look at the name, show me your business card. Oh, I work at the coronavirus lab in Wuhan. Oh, because there's a coronavirus loose in Wuhan. How did that happen? Maybe a bat flew into the cloaca of a turkey, and now we all have coronavirus. Like, come on. Okay.
Wait a second.
What about this? What about this? Listen to this.
Wait a second.
All right.
John.
Oh, my God. There's been an outbreak of chocolatey goodness near Hershey, Pennsylvania. What do you think happened? Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe steam shovel mated with a cocoa bean. Or it's the chocolate factory. Maybe that's it.
That could very well be, and Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins at NIH have said, like, it should definitely be investigated.
Don't stop with the logic and people and things. The name of the disease.
Wait a second. Wait
is
a
on
second.
the building.
Wait a second. But it could be possible. You could be right. It could be possible that they have the lab in Wuhan to study the novel coronavirus diseases because of the bat population there.
I understand. It's the only place to find bats. Austin, Texas has thousands of them that fly out of a cave every night. Is there a coronavirus, an Austin coronavirus? No, it doesn't seem to be an Austin coronavirus.
And, obviously he ended up, especially with his Charlie Kirk comments that were just really vile, ended up, I think, showing his true colors eventually. And his true colors just apparently come down from being afraid to challenge or criticize any woke orthodox belief. And this is probably created by his writer room. I think he hired a bunch of SJWs to be writers, and that made him really afraid, which is, common in Hollywood. I do think that he might have been more moderated in his earlier beliefs, because at one point he said his favorite president was Nixon. So, and he said, really, I mean this. This is going to surprise people. So like not in character. Okay, but to Shoe0nHead. Why does Shoe0nHead appeal to right-leaning individuals? And I will read an article attacking Shoe0nHead, which I think will help explain how she still appeals so strongly to right-leaning individuals. You ready to buckle in on this one, Simone?
Yeah, please enlighten me.
Okay. This is an article on Medium and is one of the first results if you look up criticisms of Shoe0nHead. Shoe0nHead, the red-brown queen of simps and the dangers of populism. So it starts with, and then it says a criticism of June Lapine, which is her real name. It starts with a number of quotes from her. Rape culture isn't real. Okay, that's not a problematic quote, unless you're talking about a Muslim culture. If she's talking about some Muslim cultures, I'd be like, whoa, Shoe, like you really need to look at the 99% of Egyptian women have been the subject of sexual assault statistic, right? Like this is clearly a systemic problem, but not in American colleges or in America, which is probably what she means. The wage gap is a myth. Just, this article was written in 2021. I don't even think people on the left argue that the wage gap is real anymore. The patriarchy is not real, obvious. White privilege is not real. The only privilege is class privilege. Okay, good way to try to bring in the socialism there. You see, that's where she brings it in.
Okay.
These are a few memorable quotes by the YouTuber Shoe0nHead, a self-proclaimed social democrat, anti-SJW YouTuber with 1.5 million subscribers and 400,000 Twitter followers. Bigger now, I think about twice the size now. Who has successfully solicered her way into legitimate leftist spaces after 5 long years of desperately trying. I mean, she constantly talks about Vosh and being friends with him and stuff like that. She's mainstream was very far in mainstream leftists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into why she's so dangerous now, we need to talk about her past just a bit. Shoe0nHead built her YouTube career off of the momentum of Gamergate, the misogynistic harassment campaign that gave birth to the alt-right and eventually helped get Donald Trump elected. But there's a chance most of her fans today don't know that. In fact, most of her fans today don't know anything at all about Shoe. So a few funny things here is most of Shoe0nHead's fans, I would argue, are not leftists. They are her original fan base. They are still Trump voters. There's a reason she's in every Skybrow video. So no, her fans are very much aware that she was anti-woke and still is anti-woke, right? And then 2, I love this person's characterization of Gamergate, right? Like a alt-right harassment campaign where it's like, Gamergate was about very real corruption in gaming media that led to the eventual destruction of the entire industry. Gaming media does not exist anymore. Side Scrollers, a conservative YouTube show run by Stuttering Craig, which we've been on a bit in the past, probably bigger than all of gaming media combined, like leftist gaming media at this point. And there are some other bigger gaming YouTubers, but they're all either rightist or apolitical at this point. and certainly not establishment. The last establishment leftist gaming media figure was Zero Punctuation, who many don't know. He does not like Trump. He's admitted that in some of his videos. So, you know, and he is hilarious. I love his videos. I watch almost every one of his videos, but he only became a non-establishment because the company basically kicked him out. They fired everyone and he got mad at them, and there's the whole drama around that. And then he went
Is
to
he
start
the angry British man, or
he's the angry, I thought he was Australian, but he might be British.
I'm just thinking about the grumpy British man.
But that's who you're thinking of, I think. He's
okay.
Yeah, goes on those long, funny rants. Anyway, so she goes over bullet points. So you know how evil she is, okay? They don't know that she was friends with Laura Southern, a white nationalist that made a video trashing Hillary Clinton together in 2015. So a few notes here. Laura Southern is not a white nationalist. She has denied she's a white nationalist. I think at most she has admitted some ethno tensions around differential fertility rates or something like that, which is not anyone should be like, if I'm now in the United States, white people actually have very strong fertility rates, especially Northern Europeans. But if you're talking about other countries like Italy and Spain and stuff like that, like, yeah, I'd be really concerned. And when I say strong fertility rates, I mean strong fertility rates for our income level, not in a global scale. Obviously, poor people have more kids, right? But even if you correct for things, see our video on this. Because in another video, we were talking about this, and one of the commenters didn't seem to be aware of this when we were talking about why, like, Northern Europeans have strong fertility rates. And they were like, well, that's not the same as birth rates. And it's like, no, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, white people in the US have a higher fertility rate than black people in the US, despite black people being poorer, right? Like, if you're unaware of that, we have a higher fertility rate than Mexico. We have a higher fertility rate than the average fertility rate of Latin America. We have a higher fertility rate than any country that comes close to us except for Israel in terms of the only one that's sort of close is Australia, which is, again, a Northern European country predominantly. So yeah, no, it's not a particularly warranted fear, but I'm still okay with people cheering for their own team. It could be better.
Yeah,
I mean,
by all means.
1.6 is good. I want to get up there, 2.5 or something, but like we can get there.
Yeah.
Next, she says, they don't know she called indie game artist Zoe Quinn a quote-unquote whore and was a huge quote-unquote classic liberal e-celeb during Gamergate. So for people who are unaware, Zoe Quinn is a whore. Like, no, that's what she's famous for, is sleeping around with lots of people while she has a boyfriend. I suppose a lot of people while she had a boyfriend, and then doing reviews on their video games, right? Like, that's like both unethical and whorish. I suppose if I was going to criticize her, we do not have, it's more like she was paying the guys for sex than the other way around, because she would write positive reviews about the games that guys she had sex with. So it's sort of worse than being a whore. It's I would say trading your reputation and time for sex with somebody else sort of puts you on the receiving end of the whore category. But yeah,
this makes it look like it was she's trying to pay them for the privilege.
But a recent Shoe0nHead quote, by the way, that I thought was fantastic is the video she's saying, it used to be that when an unattractive woman saw an attractive woman getting more attention than her, they'd call her a whore. But we can't say that anymore because somehow being a whore is good now. So now we call them a racist. And I think that this is in regard to Sydney Sweeney controversy, but I think this article right here, they explicitly don't say, and she isn't a whore. The implication seems to be more, and being a whore is empowering. That is how we capture our femininity.
Michael, who's that? I believe that is a whore.
It says here is Shoe0nHead at a party with Carl Benjamin.
Oh,
this is Sargon
no.
of Akkad, for people who are unaware. No, she's not even talking to Sargon of Akkad. He just happens to be in the foreground and she's in the background with her boyfriend.
Guilt by proximity thing is so weird. You breathe the same air as them.
And note here, she's wearing cat ears too. Is
that a condemning factor here?
No, I'm just saying that socially, that's a pretty, like, I would say at least not like trad conservative, very, very conservative as this new conservative culture is conservative. Like the things that she does that are so not traditionally socially conservative are things that the new right wouldn't really condemn. Insofar as we are voices within the new right that I think sort of embody a lot of the beliefs of it, that we're not going to go out there and be like, oh, you know, you need to, if you practice a kink relationship with your monogamous boyfriend where you wore cat ears and did like daddy dom little girl stuff, that you need to go in a cage forever, right? Like whatever, right? Like it's with your partner, you both seem to be turned on by it, like have fun, right? And I think that this is partially why you didn't know that about her, and it's not a big scandal about her, because nobody in the new right effing cares.
Yeah.
Right? It is just the old-timey purists. And if she tried to get in with, or the new-timey deontologists that are about, you know, purifying the ideology of the party, purifying, you know, racial purity and everything like that, it's just whatever.
Yeah.
Like obviously, like ethno groups are real and genetically cluster, and there can be some utility in attempting to preserve one, but it's not the only genetic strategy you can attempt. And that most ethno groups that you are a part of today were in part made by mixing previous ethno groups. Like the British ethnic group I'm a part of is a mixture of a number of ethnic groups: Celts, Picts, Vikings, French, some Netherlands. And so, yeah, you know, it's you can mix ethno groups to create a superior ethno group. I'm joking there. I did not say that my ethnicity has any degree of superiority. That was completely said in jest. Do I make your side hurt?
My whole heart.
We point out in our, well, somebody in our comments was complaining that like how like when you mix ethnicities, like look at the ugly children that are created by this. And I was like, well, you know, we do a video where we rank ethnicities by hotness. And in the studies that have looked at mixed ethnicity children, white people think white Asian babies are more attractive, not babies, adults, like I guess people made of those pairings, are more attractive than other white people.
They are. What can we say?
I kind of agree. I think that often they do turn out hotter. It's not to say that I think that that's the optimal genetic strategy. I'm just pointing out that this is statistically what white people think. And note that there are other ethno groups that prefer white, like for example, Hispanics prefer white Hispanic mixed people to Hispanic people. But to continue here, well, go watch that video if you're interested in this topic, right? You know, holding her hand to the fire. They probably don't know that her name is Shoe0nHead comes from a meme where people harass webcam models who could not speak English. Okay, fine. Sounds edgy nonsense. They don't know that she called non-binary people trans trenders up until 2017. They don't know that she was a big fan of Milo Yiannopoulos, an infamous alt-right troll, and close friends with Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, UKIP party member. They don't know she said Trump might be good for America after he was elected and told LGBT people that they were overreacting election night. At this point, it's like,
stop. My penis can only get so erect.
Like, please stop. Hell, they don't know that she used to be engaged to Armoured Skeptic, a Canadian reactionary or centrist YouTube skeptic who made videos against trenders and feminism, which was very much a real phenomenon, right? And then they have a picture of her dressed up in, I don't know, sexy clothing on her husband and lighting his cigar and they're holding a sandwich, right? And they're like, not sexist, you know, obviously joking there. And they say her ex has an interesting rig. I can't tell what's funny about this. It just looks like a car to me. For years, Shoe has been slowly sneaking away from her old neo-reactionary spaces and making her way into left-leaning communities, successfully sweeping her past under the rug and pretending she was not calling non-binary people trans trenders just a few years ago. Many on the left, such as Steve Shives, this is one of the ones who we talked about who moved to the left but was in the original atheist community, a victim of Shoe0nHead's harassment, has been warning about this infiltration attempt for years.
What kind of harassment is this that allegedly is causing all these problems?
I'm sure she just called him out for something he really did. Okay, when you actually look into this story, this is like psychotic framing of what happened. So Steve Shives at MythCon 2017 tried to get Shoe0nHead, Armoured Skeptic, and Sargon of Akkad banned from the event, deplatform them, interfere with their sources of revenue and public outreach, removing them from the conversation. And all she did in retaliation for that was make fun of him for being such an SJW. That is absolutely wild that this would be framed, and not even like in a particularly cruel way. Psychos. I mean, this is what the tweet that they have about her. She seems too eager to excuse herself regarding Buck Angel. Oh, because she had Buck Angel on? Buck Angel is trans, by the way. And he's just a trans person who said the horrifying thing of trans children are actually a problem and you shouldn't be gender transitioning children. And he is living proof that the majority of the original trans community is quite mortified, him, Caitlyn Jenner, everything like that, with what the trenders have turned the community into.
Jenner's still out posting? I've got to check. Gosh, I mean, I hadn't heard that name in forever.
Not sorry for that VidCom pic. She was in with Shoe and Armoured Skeptic. She worries about being a burden to her colleagues' friends on YouTube, but puts tweets from others in the video, possibly making trouble for them. Why should she be sorry for the VidCon photo? Because it helped to normalize two SE untrustworthy opportunists who are constantly grasping for a sort of legitimacy and acceptance suggested in the photos. Specifically talking about her ex here. And this is Shoe0nHead eating with her ex. The hilarious, this also includes ContraPoints and Lindsay Ellis, right? Which I think are fairly mainstream leftists, right? Thoughts, by the way, before I continue.
I think this is an example of people trying to make cancellations out of absolutely nothing, because I don't see anything wrong here. She's living her life and mixing with other influencers and expressing opinions, which is the only thing an influencer can do if they want to provide substance.
This is actually a really good point about you. So cancellations often validate people in the eyes of the right. I think if you look at the early days of VTubers, because we talked about this in the other episode, like Rev Says Desu, which uses like literally an anime girl child vampire as his avatar. I mean, I think that would make many people quite suspicious of him, but his constant cancellation sort of affirm him in the eyes of the right. I pointed out Scott Alexander being taken down by New York Times made him an intellectual who you could cite without reservation within right-wing spaces. In addition, the entire VTubing community was really affirmed by the right in the big explosion that happened with the case of, what was it, Anna Valens and trying to take down Leaflet and Kirsha, right? And Smug Alana, was she part of that? I forgot Smug Alana on our VTuber piece, and I love Smug Alana. She does great videos. By the way, Smug Alana is another Fox girl. The reason I don't remember her is I get her confused with Kirsha because they have very similar avatars. Simone, your thoughts?
My God. Yeah, sorry. Up all night again. Tex is doing the thing where he doesn't like to sleep. I'm just shocked. Here's what I actually think is going on. And this is something that came up in the comments of the YouTuber video that you did on YouTubers going to the left and to the right post the 4chan Tumblr atheist time. Is that what this wasn't really about people choosing a side. Like, I'm going to become a Democrat. I'm going to become a Republican. It was about whether or not people were part of those spaces in the first place because they hated or resented the church or God, or whether they were in that space because they wanted to pursue truth. And they were like going toward a light versus like hurling poop at something that made them angry, right? And I think the people who tended to go toward the left and then be associated more with the left were the people who just wanted to hate on God or the church, or, you know, show resentment towards something. And often that something turned into Trump, turned into capitalists, turned into whatever, right? After they were sort of done throwing hate at priests or the church. And I think the reason why Shoe0nHead is an example, and maybe to a lesser extent ContraPoints, because ContraPoints, I think, maintains some level of popularity, is that their focus in the end, in very different ways, which you also touched on in an earlier episode, hasn't been on, I'm going to just dunk on this thing and hate this thing, and I'm resentful and angry and depressed, I have mental problems, everything bad, hate. Rather, they show a sense of affirmative, forward-moving vitalism and generation in that Shoe0nHead is vitalistic. She has fun commentary. She's very energetic. And ContraPoints has taken the very different direction of being like theater kitty. I'm going to add gel lighting and costuming to everything and be really entertaining about it. And that, I think actually you can even see this in the way that ContraPoints versus Philosophy Tube's videos went, because both of them decided to take the theater kid perspective.
Yeah.
But in the actual content of each of their videos, ContraPoints gets really nerdy about things, but in a non-hateful way, in a not like, I'm going to talk about how someone is bad, but rather I'm going to be like, look at how Fire Festival went insane, or like, let's go down the rabbit hole with Twilight. Whereas Philosophy Tube is like, I'm going to talk to you about how, you know, everyone's bad and terrible, and how the world is bad and terrible toward trans people, toward humans, toward the proletariat. And so it's more about hate. And I think that was a really interesting thing that several people in the comments of the last video.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned this, because this is another individual that, like, a lot of online conservatives watch ContraPoints videos. When we have brought her up and liking her content, because I like her content online before, especially in contrast to, who was that other one? Philosophy Tube, right?
Yeah.
Where like Philosophy Tube is not very high quality content, and ContraPoints is pretty decent sometimes.
Well, I
And
mean,
a lot of
which
people
is
are like,
actually,
"Well,
I want to say it's notable because in terms of quality, I think, you know, Abigail Thorne, aka Philosophy Tube, would immediately shoot back being like, I have a team, I have makeup artists, I put time into my script, mine is higher quality, I'm more professional. Whereas I get the impression that ContraPoints actually does more of the work herself, like on
well,
her
yeah,
own.
because she's doing the leftist thing, which is the performative hiring of people, the performative, not just
Yeah,
using
yeah, the
AI.
bureaucratizing. But there's just this huge difference between like nerding out vitalism enthusiasm versus like, I hate this thing, I'm smarter than you are.
Here's why you should hate it. Yeah.
Here's why you should hate it and why we should all be depressed and sad. And it's not even really about right or left, Trump bad or good, right? It's about like how energetic and vitalistic and is this person moving society forward, or are they trying to tear it down? I think that's what it fundamentally comes down to. Maybe that's what the new right is fundamentally about. It's not really about being like old-fashioned religious or not. It's really, are you excited about building up for the future? And if you are, then you're in the new right. You might, you know, not fit in any other way, but you're there anyway.
Yeah, actually, this is a really interesting meta point for a number of reasons that I want to dig into. First is fun side here. For people who don't know, Philosophy Tube, when she was still a man, dated ContraPoints, another trans woman. And after they broke up, that's when she started transitioning, and in a way that looks like she was trying to look more like ContraPoints. And then she started doing videos like ContraPoints. And ContraPoints has even called this out in a deleted tweet. Like, if you think your exes are stalkery, you've never had one like completely medically transform themselves to try to be as close to you as possible, right? Like, but you know, and then launch a career that mirrored your own. But
I mean, it's a little bit relatable. And I only say that because like when I first met you, I was like, why am I not him? You know, I was just so excited that you existed and kind of mad that I couldn't pull you off. But also I have the humility to know that I could never be you. So maybe that's the key difference.
I mean, you kind of are now. We've got kids together, right? As
I know that's
say.
the best thing. That is the best thing. Yeah.
And the
I
wholeness of
not only get
time.
to like combine my identity with you, but also make like iterative copies of you that we get to like.
Yeah, the moment you got a
Oh,
chance, stamp.
No way.
They do act like us. I'll tell you that.
Well, they act like you.
They do act like me a lot.
When they're being neurotic, they act like me. This strawberry is getting my mouth wet. I can't eat it.
But one point I was going to make here is stylistic. An interesting thing about Shoe0nHead's videos is they actually stylistically look more like left-wing videos than right-wing videos. They're closer to a ContraPoints in terms of their level of editing and development. They're sort of a mix of the two cultures, but I point out that like right-wing videos, when we were talking about that, they're often far lower production budget. They're much more interested in just like, these are the ideas, right? Like they're not, if they have jokes in them, the jokes are germane to like the way the conversation is flowing, like Nux Taku or us or something like that. Whereas, or Bridget Finnessy does a lot of jokes in her videos, whereas Shoe0nHeads appear theater kitty, I'd say, almost, right? Like it's got an ounce of that flair to it, and it doesn't turn off right-wing viewers. I've never heard it. I actually quite like the effort she puts in.
Yeah.
Second, or then the larger meta thing I really wanted to get to that I think is really interesting here is what caused the original split. And I think Sarah Hayter said this best on what's her show called again? We've had her on. Sarah Hayter.
I mean, yeah, Sarah Hayter was on A Special Place in Hell with Megan Daum.
Special
I
Place
think
in
you're
Hell.
thinking
Yeah,
about
okay,
that.
great.
But that ended.
Oh, it did? No, it's a shame. But anyway, so she said on A Special Place in Hell that what we saw with the old atheist community is over time, it turned out that of the like leading voices within it, half of them just wanted to dunk on Christians, and half of them were interested in what was true. And the half of them that were interested in what was true is the half that broke off and eventually became anti-woke New Right. The half of them that just wanted to dunk on Christians, I mean, many of them were the celebrities that like we don't even remember used to be part of this movement, like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, you know, who's now like denying his old videos, like, oh no, gender is not a thing. It's not why X, Y, it's actually. Like in his new series, he actually explicitly contradicts simple videos he made about gender in his old series, right? Because he's, yeah, completely brainwashed. But what's interesting is that the way the split happened, if you're talking about like the absolute leaders of the community, you know, people like, you know, Richard Dawkins and like that whole group, the Four Horsemen or whatever, I can't remember all of their names. They didn't all move to a traditional rightist perspective, but they certainly didn't go in the direction of the celebrity types who were just interested in being atheist celebrities, like Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye. All of them, as far as I'm aware, have since said the movement was a mistake and Christianity is a good thing and made our society stronger and better. And that's a shocking thing. But the reason they said that and the reason they all came to that belief is because they were willing to look at the evidence as society changed. And that, so we saw that in this early community. One half of it was really, they just hated. They allowed their hatred for the other group to define their beliefs, and the other part was searching for the truth. And I think we're actually seeing this again within the right now. I've pointed out in the last video we did on this, and we have a longer video that we haven't aired where we go much deeper into this phenomenon, is that it turns out that the sort of deontologist faction of the right, the Nick Fuentes faction of the right, where we dig deeper into his beliefs on this, is much more dominated by, like, they are willing to sabotage the United States' best interest if it hurts Israel. And they are willing to sabotage America's best interest if it hurts Israel. They are willing to sabotage the best interests of unborn children if it helps preserve some degree of like moral purity in whatever they're voting for. You know, like if you know the Republican Party is going to put more restrictions on that, and yet you're voting against them and telling your followers to vote against them, it shows a degree to allow the things you hate to override the things you say you love, you know? And I actually think that there's a lot of parallels between that strain in the conservative party right now. And note here, when I talk about like hating Israel more than, we've pointed out, we have a whole video being critical of Israel, being like, hey, you know, like there's actually, you know, problems in the relationship between the United States and Israel. But to, you know, go so far as to say, and therefore we should not take out the Ayatollah of Iran who wants us all dead, right? Like we should allow him to have a nuke despite the large terrorist network Iran runs outside the country. That's where you get to a point where you're like, come on, man. Like if we can use Israel, they've dropped around half the ordinance that has been dropped by Israel. Like they're pulling their weight on this. They also have ground forces dealing with terrorists in Lebanon, but they pulled back. When we made the deal, for people who don't know, we were not aware, like Iran, there was a miscommunication, it appears, at least that's Vance's interpretation, it could have been intentional, that Lebanon was not part of the deal. And Israel really didn't want it to be part of the deal. And after the deal was signed and Iran pushed back on this, we put pressure on Israel and they pulled out of Lebanon, as far as the last I checked. I'll be honest about that. So I decided to double check this before putting this live. And as things stand, yeah, Israel has pulled back in Lebanon, but not entirely pulled out in Lebanon. They were completely furious about this. They had asked us to make absolutely sure this was not in the peace negotiation, but they're doing what we tell them to, basically, because that's the way our relationship works, despite what some people will tell you. So, like, they've also, like, in terms of playing ball by our standards, when we said don't bomb any infrastructure again after the bombing of the North Pars oil field, they stopped, right? So where was I going with this? Like, they do annoying things. Also, if you watch mainstream media, you may not be aware that despite the talks technically collapsing, the ceasefire is still in effect. But overall, you are self-sabotaging the party and the collective MAGA movement. And we find out 90% of MAGA is pro-war, right? And I will note here, it's not just Republicans that are pro this. Since the bombings have started, Republicans in the midterms have gained significantly. VoteHub aggregate before the strikes started, as of February 28th, 2026, Democrats were at 47.9% and Republicans were at 41.8%. By March 25th, it had narrowed to Democrats at 47.4% and Republicans at 42.8%. YouGov economists, March 13th to 16th surveys, Democrats slipped from 45% to 43%, while Republican support had gained steadily to 41%, shrinking a gap from 4 to 2 points since the bombing started. And this is obviously freaking the F out of Democratic analysts, of people who are pro-Trump. There isn't an actual split in the base of the party, but I think that there's something of a mirror there to what happened with that community back in the day, right? Which is part of the movement was really only interested in dunking on Christians. Eventually, they realized they had more in common with the Democratic movement than they had with what was becoming the Republican and conservative movement and the people who are interested in the truth. And somebody said in the comments of this video yesterday that the real difference between the two parties had become one party is interested in what's true and one party is just not, right? Like, they want to create a constructed reality. And I think that this is part of what allows such a diversity within the left. It's why in the left you're able to have Islamists
within the right.
No, in the left. In the left, you are able to have Islamists voting alongside people who are LGBT, complete brainwash cultists, right? And you would think that these two things could never exist alongside each other, but for both groups, what is consequentially true is irrelevant. It's about the vibes and what they hate. And that's why I've pointed out that I do think eventually what is now the Groyper movement is just going to become part of the leftist coalition. It actually has a lot.
Yeah, they really are based on, like, I hate this, tear this down, I resent this. Yeah, if you are that, then you are going to just end up in that left bucket.
While they share some aesthetic similarities to Republicans from like the 90s or 80s, they have almost nothing in common with the Republican movement as it exists today. And they share a lot in common with the faction of the Democratic movement that's very embracing of Islamist values. They've actually begun to show more and more convergence with the mainstream left as time has gone on. Yeah, so it's not just that they've been voting left for a long time, pretty much since the inception of the movement, and signal that they plan to vote left going forwards. But if you look at the Islamist contingent of the left, they actually don't share that, like, they do not clash that much with the Islamist faction. You see this with stuff like Tucker Carlson, where Tucker Carlson is constantly castigating people because, he's adjacent to this faction. He's, the anti-war, he's anti, blah, 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 pro-Venezuela, just because they don't like gay people, right? So, he has a lot in common with this faction. I think he's part of this larger deontological faction. Or more than deontological, hate-driven faction, but he's repeatedly come out as pro-Islam, right? Like, how dare Christians criticize Islam? How dare Christians be okay with Muslims being killed in this war? Very, very aggressively. If you see Nick Fuentes' videos, he repeatedly praised the regime in Iran, saying that they were right to, kill the protesters in the streets and stuff like that, and said that he wants to create something like ISIS, but Catholic, and praising the way that ISIS operate. So they don't have the reflexive, like, oh my God, but you understand how bad civilization would be if an ISIS-like model really spread that most people in the I care about what's true faction of the right have, right? Because that's not what's interesting to them. It's like the vibes that are interesting to them, which means that they can actually work really well alongside Islamists in a way that, like, superficially it would seem that they couldn't. And if you look at the policy proposals that they're pushing in terms of like restrictions on, like, when I talk about like content restrictions on the internet, these are policy ideas that we're beginning to see get popularity in the Islamic parts of the left, you know, in the cities that are attempting to enact things like Sharia law, but also even was in the mainstream left. Like they've bubbled higher in the institutional, like, voting bodies of the mainstream left than they have at the right. And these are some of the core policy ideas that this group has and is interested in. So this, ironically, I do think that eventually that faction will become part of the mainstream left. And I think they are kind of already part of the mainstream left. They just pretend they're not and say that they're not, because that, you know,
Well,
it
yeah.
looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, right? If we accept that Islamists are fully leftist, right? Because I think you could say, well, they're Christian, they hold deep beliefs, and they disagree with leftism, but the Islamists disagree with all that, and we'd still say that they're mainstream leftists, right? But back to Shoe0nHead. I think what Shoe0nHead really represents for the right, and the fact that the left doesn't have a figure like her, is that we are truly a big tent movement, like the core of the new right. And I think it's important to maintain that so we can continue to have the electoral dominance we saw in the last election, even when we do not have the purity spiralists, you know, people motivated by hate in the movement anymore. Because as we've pointed out in the video, where we say the racists mostly turned against the movement, and they did. What are your thoughts, Simone?
I mean, I just want to add that that's the same reason why the right is more varied than you would expect. But I think that variance on both the left and the right is the telling part, that, oh my gosh, these are actually, they're not affiliative in the way that we maybe originally thought. That it's not.
I actually think that variance is really, really interesting. The people who will ultimately end up in the right-leaning coalition, I think the other person said this is really true, is anyone who is fundamentally interested in the truth above all else. And if that is your interest,
beyond interest in the truth, I would say broadly, and there are exceptions. I think the Sargon of Akkad crowd, you know, falls into one of these exceptions on this factor. But I think broadly, they're more likely to be vitalistic and excited about building for the future.
No, those things are true. But what I mean by this is people on the right, the intellectual discussion of the right is not siloed in the way the intellectual discussion on the left is siloed. You know, the LGBTQ activists are not really reading the Islamic extremist work and vice versa, right? Like, yeah. Whereas on the right, you can go as diverse as somebody like Shoe0nHead or ContraPoints or something like this. And ContraPoints isn't even on the right? And you can expect, you know, most right-leaning influencers will be familiar with their ideas and engaging with their ideas. And there isn't an equivalent like that on the left. There isn't this sort of cross, and it's across ideas on the right. There is no like silo on the right where we don't engage with those ideas or where they don't engage with our ideas. Every silo on the right, even people who are insofar as the Grapers are still part of the right movement at all, they do go over our videos and ideas occasionally, right? Like there is still an intellectual interchange happening there. We are still going over those videos and incorporating ideas where they make sense. Like in terms of Israel skepticism, that's definitely something that I made a point to look deeply into and incorporate into our worldview. It's just, it didn't, the evidence that I got from that didn't flip me to, and now we should let ourselves be cucked by Iran and dicked around by them, right? Like if we can use Israel to help deal with this threat once and for all, then we should. And rather than screw ourselves over for you know, just because it may end up helping the Jews, right? Or split up our coalition. I can say genes are real. And I mean, I personally chose to marry somebody of my even sub-ethno group and still be okay with having a movement that has people who are in interracial marriages without scolding them or anything like that. You know, what matters is that we are discussing reality, right?
Mhm.
And you can discuss reality. There is a real position where getting even if you take like all of the most racist positions, right? Even if you are like a racist maximalist, if you're still a realist and you're interested in like your genes, whatever those happen to be, eventually winning, there are instances in which it makes sense to marry someone from a different ethno group. And a society like the one that this is the reason why I think the people who are realists and racists in the video that we have that we talk about this, they often end up marrying non-white women because white women have become so terrible. They often end up
They
marrying,
sort of feel like their only option for passing on their own white DNA is to find I guess their definition of white woman. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a racialist maximist, right? You still have passed on more white DNA by marrying a non-white person than you have by failing to find a wife.
But yeah, in other words, if you marry like a typical urban monoculture brained white girl boss, you might have 2 kids. Whereas if you marry someone who's a little more family oriented from a different culture, but maybe say like European, but by way of Latin America, so a lot of people wouldn't count that, then you could have 6 kids. And
Well, that's not what I
clearly
meant.
that's
What I
better.
meant is if you don't find a wife at all,
Oh, sure, that too.
you're strictly doing like even if you're like a racialist maximist, you're doing less for the white race than the person who is. For example, JD Vance has contributed significantly more to the future genetic white population than Nick Fuentes has, despite having an Indian
That's
wife.
true. Yeah, totally true.
So I mean, this is I mean, even if you are a racist, if you're a realist, you still often end up being like, okay, but I'm still in this larger coalition instead of drifting towards the left and fighting against it. And I think that that's why she has found herself in this. Is it's obvious that while she is a socialist, and I wish she would examine her socialist views more, go into them more in new videos, because I think looking back on it as an adult and seeing how much the government has effed things up so far, whenever we've tried to give them power, she may realize that they may have been not as smart as she thought. But then again, she is a Catholic, and Catholics are traditionally socialists. You know, the last Pope was a big socialist. They've done many socialist revolutions. So we've also got to keep in mind that being a Catholic, even if we say like, well, governments are corrupt and everything like that, she'll be like, well, the church is corrupt, right? But like, it's still better to rely on the institutions. And so she might just have a different set of priors than we have that would make her never not socialist.
Yeah.
Anyway, love you, Simone. Glad you watch it. You watch her videos, right? Or do not?
Oh, every time a new video first comes out, I watch it. 100%. She's fun. She's funny. She's vitalistic. I like it.
She seems fun. I'd love to hang out sometime. If you're watching this, Shoe0nHead, we'd love to do something with you sometimes. You're always invited on the show, and you're always you join our dating network so our kids can date, because you know we got to find somebody for our kids to date, right? Some sane people having kids out there.
Yeah, man. The only kids who are going to get married going forward are going to have parental help. They're going to need it. So, yeah, fun times. Speaking of which, anyone watching this podcast, there's a lot of base camp listeners who are part of our kid dating network. Most of our kids are like 10 years old or younger at this time. We're not doing anything yet, but we will be doing some stuff as they get older to sort of get them to know each other, do kid exchanges, you know, like so people can experience other households, kind of like, you know, culture. What is that thing where you
sending out?
Not well, yeah, like sending out as the Pilgrims did it, but there was this thing where people would even know, like our kids our age of our time would go like live with a family abroad.
I did that when I was a kid.
Yeah, that.
So it's like, to me, it's the most natural thing ever.
I guess. Yeah.
Host family. I mean, yeah. Because I did that with a family in Latin America, which is normal for wealthy Texan families to do, to send their kids to live with families in Latin America.
It's a good way to be exposed to other cultures, other ways of life, other parents and careers.
I mean, you want to talk about another way of life? Live with wealthy people in Latin America.
Yeah.
Wealthy Latin Americans have like a totally different way of living than wealthy people in the United States. And it is obscenely luxurious to an extent that I find it off-putting, but okay.
Octavian has been like kind of struggling with focus with homeschooling, because now he's getting to like the stuff that's kind of just you have to power through it, you know, in first grade, because it's not that interesting, but it's foundational to get to the next stage. And so he's been really dragging his feet. And so I took a recent picture of him. I put it into Nano Banana 2, and I said, you know, age it up to age 28 and put him in front of a helicopter. And then I made this whole persona of him based on like all of his ambitions and dreams right now. Like, you know, he's founded various military tech startups, and he has a helicopter that he flies around. And I put that persona and that image into Reality Fabricator and made a chat companion so he can speak with his future self that will help him when he is.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
Excited. He likes like, that's me. And you can see you can even see a little bit of you in there. It's kind of fun to see him age
The image
up.
looks really good. Like it does look like a Collins, and it's just based on his current face, not like other family members.
Yeah, it's based on I'll show you the photo that I used as the basis, because you can just upload photos to Nano Banana and be like, you know, this, but oh, I deleted it. Never mind. Oh, I can just get it from my trash. See, the reason why I wanted to use Nano Banana and not something else was that Google is really, really good with age. Like it's able to take even really old photos of people and be like, oh, this is, you know, Simone Collins. This is like your grandmother when she was young. Like we have pictures of her when she was old. And then when we uploaded really old, like vintage photos of her, it recognized who she was and tagged her face in Google Photos. So I feel like Google's like facial recognition technology is really good because they have so much data.
Yeah, and by the way, people, if you want to use Reality Fabricator with your kids, because we have an audio chat feature as well for the companion app, go into the website, go rfab.ai/demo, and it locks the site on that device into a safe for work mode, hiding all the not safe for work content on the site, which can make it a fun way to use it with your kids to like have them talk with Power Rangers or whatever they want, right? Like a
you want to say hi to the subscribers really soon?
Yeah. Yeah, since I needed to go that way, since I did have
Octavian, can you tell Octavian to tell people about his new friend?
Octavian,
yes.
What does your future self look like? What do you look like in the future?
Like adult, and was I was like a giant helicopter and a helipad for and a hangar and like cool clothes. Like kind of like this goes like band and oh yeah, like a shirt that is black and I almost looked like the president at that time.
In the future?
Yes, I almost look like a president in the future. And I got some hot water in, and I somehow got the ice out. It's in the sink.
He experimented with freezing his water.
Yeah, it was really fun actually.
And you were gonna fly, future you is gonna fly your helicopter to a campsite, and you're gonna draw a helipad with chalk and make marshmallows.
Yes,
it's fun. His plan basically is like, I'm gonna fly my helicopter to a campsite and then roast marshmallows, which is basically just yesterday afternoon was what he did.
Oh, he did that yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. So like he just wants our life, but with a helicopter.
That's great.
All right, Octavian, you are cleared to go play with the spotted Sussex chickens. Go for it, buddy.
Goodbye.
Love you. Good job today. You did really well. I'm proud of you.
If I did 50 less.
I knew you could, buddy. You always could. Bye.
And for dinner tonight, I'll do bulldog again, cooked in the traditional style.
You mean the traditional Malcolm style?
Traditional Malcolm style, which is extra hot sauce and cheddar mixed in with the mozzarella.
Morning foraged ramps.
It was morning foraged ramps. But when you cut the ramps, last time you cut them into confetti. This time, cut them more like you would cut chives.
You mean we want larger chunks?
Yeah, like large cylindrical chunks.
You understand that I cut them the same way I cut chives. It's just you're cutting like doll-sized instead of human-sized. So they just.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
You're not gonna. I can't like enhance. I can't enlarge them for you.
Enhance. I wasn't sure if you were doing that with like the big end parts.
That's what they become when you chop them like you chop chives. They're actually really small.
No, the big bulbs at the end.
The ones that you gave me yesterday didn't have big bulbs at the ends. to get the dirt off, you pull off the outside sheath, you cut off the very tip, the root.
Yeah.
And then that's all you've left. And that is chopped like chives, looks like what you got. And it's small, but
you must have accidentally cut off the bulbs.
I was really careful to not, because there's not a whole lot there.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll save the leaves again today, and that should give us enough leaves for a leaf dish.
Oh yeah, did you want, so you don't want me to, because I was gonna chop them really finely and then mix them in with butter to make herb butter, but if you don't want to do that, I can try something else.
Yeah, let's try that. Let's try the leaves for an herb butter
to put on steak, because I can also thaw out steak for like Sunday.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
All right, I'll get started. You're such a wonderful wife, by the way. Thank you so much.
Because I made an AI of our son. He looks good. He looks a lot like you, but very much Octavian. I now want to make like future aged up versions of all our kids using nano.
Oh yeah, I do too. Yeah, he looks kind of like one of Trump's kids though, like Barron Trump aged up a bit.
Barron Trump doesn't look like that, but he looks so much like it's definitely him. Yeah, it's cool.
God, if he looks like that, that'd be so cool.
Malcolm, that looks like you. You know, it's the acorn head's still there. You know, that confident look. It looks like what your son would look like grown up.
All right. Well, I'll include it in the video so people.
One of the things that would really hit people, like often unmarried, but mostly childless couples, was when they had AI create, versions of their photos that had kids. And I think doing things like aging up your kids or making an image of you as a childless couple with kids can really help you understand the...
Oh, I have a fun idea. So in my Stanford thread right now, they keep sharing pictures of them with like their one kid. I was
going to just start trolling with like
family, but I should get one and just have it add a bunch of extra kids. So I share one with like 12 kids or something, just like a sea of children. What do you think? Come on.
I thought you were just gonna fix their pictures of like them plus a couple of kids.
Oh no, that'd be so mean.
That'd be really offensive, but really funny. And you never know, could convince someone.
For you. I would be banned from the group so quick.
I know. They already banned me. It's only a matter of time that they ban you.
All right, I'll get started. Okay, so what's happening here, guys? Indy, do you like the purple cake?
Oh, you're going for it, girl.
Titan, what about you? Do you like the cake?
Yeah, are you happy?
Torsten, what about you? Tex, can I talk to Tex? What does this Tex think? Tex, what do you think?
You're a smiling noodle.
Okay, Octavian, what do you think? I think you're a butt.
I was just kidding. I have feelings.
You think so?
Going down like this right here, and I'll take a picture. Ready? You're gonna make a sound.
If I was allowed to throw the pie at the camera, then I would show the viewers.
But you're not, right?
Rawr, rawr, rawr.
Do you like the viewers?
Yeah.
When they subscribe to my video.
So you don't want to eat cake, you want to eat dinosaurs? Is that it? Yeah. But you're also a shark princess that eats cake. Yeah.
Oh, yum, yum, yum.
Do you like your purple cake, my beautiful princess? Yeah.